Hi there, my name is Ellen, and I'll be correcting this set of essays for you. I understand from your email that you're taking IELTS for the first time sometime next month. So I just want to say great job for submitting a set of essays to us. It's really important to get feedback on your way to IELTS so that you can see what areas are strong and what areas need a little work. So with that, let's just get right into it. This is the essay about ex-convicts. So let's see what you said. The adolescent crime is one of the critical issues in many modern societies. Some people advise that it may be good for the well-behaved ex-prisoner to share experience with teenager and argue that it may help youngers know the risk of offending law. I strongly agree with this idea and explain the reason in the following essay. Okay, so the good thing is that you have pretty much included all of the components that you needed to in this introduction. So you rephrased the prompt, you explained to us what the situation is, what the controversy, as it were, is, and you also expressed your position. And so all that's really important. Unfortunately, what needs a lot of work here is the grammar. There were mistakes throughout this paragraph. I think there were, what, 3 sentences, and all of them had mistakes. So let's take a look at it one by one. Now, here's the thing. We're not concerned about adolescent crime. That's not what really is the issue here. But the idea is to talk to teenagers in order to prevent them one day becoming criminals. So I think you misunderstood that a little bit. We're not only concerned with adolescent crime. Not that that's really a term. It's actually juvenile. Anyway, but so this was a little inaccurate for me, okay? I think what would have been better is maybe something like crime prevention. All right, so why don't we try that? That might have actually fit here better. So let's see how it works. Crime prevention is one of the critical issues in many modern societies. Okay, that works. Some people advise. Now, this is the wrong spelling of advise because you actually wrote advice, the noun, that it may be good for well-behaved ex-prisoners, so no the, and you need an S here, to share their experiences with teenagers and argue that it may help youngsters know the risk of breaking the law. Okay, so you can see there were numerous mistakes in that sentence. I strongly agree with this idea and will explain the reasons, because there's not just one reason, in the following essay. Okay, and so with that, it becomes a much stronger introduction. Your introduction is really important because it's the first impression that the examiner gets of your writing. So reading it, your examiner is thinking, okay, what am I looking at here? Is this a 6? Is this a 5? Is this a 7? Where is this person? So you really want to make the best impression possible. All right, let's move on. To start off, the prisoner's speech about terrible experience of prison was much more persuasive than teacher and policeman due to their real experience of imprisonment. For instance, some people in Hong Kong who were jailed for many years due to trafficking drugs became social workers. They were able to persuade the youngsters not to commit the crime of drug while they shared awful daily life of prison to them. If more successful ex-offenders can tell the youths how terrible the prison is, more youths may keep distance from offending crimes. Okay. Let's see. First, I want to make sure that I understand your central meaning. I think you're telling us here that ex-prisoners are just very persuasive in preventing crime in young people. So, uh, again, there was problem with grammar. It wasn't entirely accurate and it needed a little work. So let's try about that. And even vocabulary too. Like I understand what you're trying to say, but the vocabulary is really lacking the precision it needs to be considered like a higher level essay. Okay. And here I didn't understand why any of this was in the past tense. It should have all been in the present. So I want to try reading it again, maybe correcting some of that. To start off, prisoners, I don't know how I want to do this. Let me think about it for a second. Okay, to start off, prisoners speaking about their terrible experience of prison can be much more persuasive than teachers or policemen due to their real experience of imprisonment. For instance, some people in Hong Kong who were jailed for many years due to drug trafficking became social workers, and, or you could have said where, they were able to persuade youngsters not to, you can't say commit the crime of drug, not to get involved in drugs while they shared the awful daily life of prison with them. Okay. If more successful ex-offenders can tell the youths how terrible prison is, more youths may keep their distance from crime. Okay, get rid of the offending. So it was really good that you had this grammatical structure here. You had a conditional with an if. And so that was really good. That's nice to see in task 2, but there were other mistakes that kind of took away from the effectiveness of this. Okay, so we cleaned it up a little bit. Now let's look at your next paragraph. Moreover, the good citizens who have been prisoners may understand the catastrophe effect of committing crimes. The ex-prisoners change their behaviors and not offending laws again because they find that they lose many valuable things during imprisonment. If those ex-offenders are willing to share what they lost during detention, it may be very persuasive to the teenagers. For example, some ex-prisoner social workers are more capable to persuade to youths not committing crimes because they share their experience of losing the opportunity of studying after they are arrested and imprisoned. All right, so again, I want to clean up the grammar here. There were a number of grammatical mistakes. I do want to go through it again for that reason. First of all, it's not catastrophe. I can't talk. Sorry. It's not catastrophe effect. It's catastrophic. So that needed to be an IC. Let's see. So, moreover, the good citizens who have been prisoners may understand the catastrophic effect of committing crimes. Ex-prisoners change their behavior and do not break laws again because they know they will lose many valuable things during imprisonment. If those ex-offenders are willing to share what they lost during a detention, it may be very persuasive to the teenagers. For example, some ex-prisoner social workers are more capable of persuading youths not to commit crimes because they share their experience of losing the opportunity of studying after they are arrested and imprisoned. Okay, let's look at the conclusion now. To conclude, the offenders who are willing to become good citizens are an invaluable asset to the whole society. Their experience in the prison and the disastrous effects of committing crimes to their life may help teenagers get away from crime. Okay, so let's talk about this now a little more holistically. What I really want to talk to you about for the next couple of minutes is task achievement in this essay. I read through your paragraphs a couple of more times, these 2 body paragraphs. I read through them again. And I want to tell you what I'm a little concerned about. There are a couple of things. One of the things that I'm supposed to be able to do is I'm supposed to be able to pick out what the key idea is in this paragraph and what the key idea in this paragraph is. So it sounds to me in general that here the key argument is that former prisoners are more persuasive because they have real life experience. And then here the main idea is they're more convincing because they find that they lost lots of things. And okay, you could argue that those are two separate ideas, but I really do feel like you kind of developed them almost identically. So, in other words, these people who were social workers, they were able to persuade young people. These people became social workers and they were able to persuade young people. So, it really felt rather repetitious to me. And that's one problem, okay? They really felt kind of identical in lots of ways. The other thing that I want to point out, because you did say that you're trying to get one of those high band scores, is this word here. Where is it? There it is. Best. They are the best people. And what happens a lot of times in IELTS is that they use these absolute words like this. Best. This is the best way to do this. These are the best people. And what this does is this really allows you to kind of find a hole in that absolute argument. So for example, you could say, well, yes, it's a good solution, but no, they are not the best people. Okay? So it gives you this kind of this opening to do that. Now you decided to say yes, they are basically. They're yes, this is a great idea. But you never talked about them being the best people. Now, even when you do that, you could potentially compare them to other people. All right, because you can see that in the word best, there is comparison. So maybe you could have talked about, you talked about social workers. Well, why are they better, than social workers who weren't prisoners? Here, for example, you talked about policemen and teachers. You could have explored that a little bit better. Okay. So you could have talked about that more. So basically, if you're going to agree, yes, they are the best people, then you do want to maybe mention some better comparison, some more comparison with other people, and why these former prisoners are better people to speak than other people. Okay, but for me, this is kind of it was really okay. Let me restart that over. So if I had to point out the two biggest weaknesses, it's grammar is your first big weakness. And the second big weakness is a lot of the errors that I saw. Okay. So those are the things that I really want you to work on so that you can start working towards that 7 you need. Now let's take a look at this. Okay. This isn't one of ours. Let me see. The bar chart illustrates the life expectancy at birth and at 65 years old in England, Scotland, Wales, and North Ireland by 2006. Okay. Well, it should be in 2006, not by. Overall, females were expected to live longer than males. The people in Scotland were expected to have the shortest life. Where, not which, where both males and females were not expected to live more than 80 years. Okay. Okay, so let me just double check your figures. You said that the people in Scotland were expected to have the shortest life. Scotland. Ah, there it is. Okay. All right. Yes, that appears to be accurate. All right, good. Fine. Let's see. Next paragraph. For the life expectancy at birth, the length of life for the females in England and North Ireland its length of life was almost identical, which was 81.5 and 81 years respectively. Females in Wales experienced not the second length of life, the second longest length of life. This is awkward here. Females experience the second longest length of life. How can we say this a little cleaner? Let me think about it for a second. Differently. Females in Wales had the second longest life expectancy at around 80.9 years, full stop. The women in Scotland were expected to experience the shortest life. And the life expectancy of the women. All right. Again, I want to use some, cohesive elements here to make this kind of glue together a little better. The women in Scotland were expected to experience the shortest life with an expectancy of only 79.6 years. Here, why don't you talk about maybe like shift here as for males? So show us that you're switching sides. You're talking now about men. The males in England might live for 77.2, which is the longest life with an F in the bar chart for men, not for women. Okay, so make sure that you know that it's for men here. The length of life, all right, you said that already. The life expectancy, because this is not a right way of saying this, from birth for males in Wales, capital W, and North Ireland was around 76 years. And for Scottish males were only expected to live 74.6 years after birth. Okay. So what did you do here? You essentially told us all the figures. Now, let me just double check something. You've got 16 figures here. Fine. All right, let's look at the next paragraph. Okay. In terms of life expectancy after 65 years, get rid of this old, no males and females who were 65 years old were expected to live more than 20 years. Fine. The old women, I like that you have a nice introductory sentence here. That was really good. So the old women in England, Wales, and North Ireland were expected to live around 19 years more, whereas Scottish is the word you want. Scottish women were expected to enjoy only 18.6 years. Old men in Wales and North Ireland might be alive for an additional 16.5 years. The old males in England may experience the longest life with an additional 17.1 years. Okay, because we don't use this expression. In contrast, the men in Scotland were we're only able to live, but we're expected to live only 15.8 years more. Okay, so as you can see, I really had to correct a lot of the phrasing here, a lot of the language you used. And there's one thing else that I want to talk to you about. You saw me count up how many pieces of information you had. So you had 16 pieces of data. You didn't need to include them all. My kind of rule of thumb generally is that if you have like around 12 or like 14 pieces of data, then you should be able to include all of them. But anything over that, you're going to need some grouping. You really should not mention every single piece of information here. So like I said, you had 16 pieces and you pretty much talked about every single one of them. And what that it does is it shows it doesn't show the examiner that you're able to group and that you're able to edit. And for examiners, this is very important. So I mean, one thing that you totally could have done here, especially with this thing right here, with this figure for the men, is you could have said that all of them, oops, I wasn't supposed to do that. Okay, sorry. You could have said that all of them were expected to live approximately another 16 years. That's it. You're done. I mean, because their figure for the men is pretty much the same. I would even venture to say the same thing for women. I would say that for all of the women, they were expected to live an additional 20 years, with the exception of Scotland, at maybe 1 or 2 years less. All right, and that's it. You don't need to go into, this minute detail about every single country, the 18.6 or the 17.1. It's not necessary, and it just becomes rather messy for the examiner. All right, so this one is really about editing appropriately. All right, so that basically brings us to the end of this. So for me, the big issues here were with the data you selected and that you needed to edit. You need to have a little better task achievement here. Okay, selecting and editing the information, and of course the grammar. There was a lot of grammar mistakes everywhere throughout this essay, and so that needed some work. Okay, so you may want to continue working on your general English skills while you prepare for IELTS, or before you begin to kind of like heavily prepare for IELTS. So that's something to think about. If you enjoyed the feedback, then I encourage you to look at the email that will accompany this correction. There'll be different ways to continue working with us. So hopefully you'll find the one that works for you best, and we'll get to work with you in the future. So best of luck to you.